Welcome back to the USD 495 Super Chat, the podcast that takes you on the journey through USD 495 Fort Larned. We're here we will celebrate the successes of our students and staff, explore some of our programs and partnerships, and keep you informed about the upcoming events. I'm Bryce Wachs, your host and Superintendent USD 495. So we're excited again to kick this year off with some great podcast guests and stuff. So today I'm excited to welcome our first guest for the 24-25 school year, Erin Tims, who's a senior here at Larned High School. Erin recently represented Larned at the Sunflower Girls State, which was in Topeka, and then went on also to attend Girls Nation. That was in Washington, D.C. over the summer. So we're thrilled to have Erin here to share those experiences, what she learned, and some of those great leadership opportunities. So excited to have you here today, Erin, and discuss those a little bit. So in starting off, I guess, tell us a little bit about what Sunflower Girls State is and what it's all about. You know, how did you kind of get involved in that opportunity?
Okay, well, thank you for having me. Girls State is a civic leadership program, so it teaches about government, and mainly it focuses on the Kansas government, so like how the elections work, how campaigning works, and just kind of like the different ins and outs of government that you wouldn't otherwise know. And so it's just kind of an overview of that for young women who are hopefully going to become civic leaders in the future. So,
looking back at, getting to go to Girls State this summer, walk me through how you got selected, applied, and so on to get that opportunity to be in Topeka.
So I actually hadn't heard of Girls State until I got a letter in my mailbox that said, "You're invited." And I had no idea what it was. And my dad saw the letter and he said, "You're going," because he went to Boys State in Mississippi. And so he knew kind of what it was about. And he said, "You're going to want to go." And so I figured, why not? So I applied, and then I found out that 3 other girls from Larned had got that letter too. So all 3 of us applied, and then we just went together. So
got selected, you're in Topeka, you're at Girls State. For people, like you said, your dad participated in Boys State. For people that don't know what Girls State is or Boys State, explain what that is. And you said it was a civic opportunity, and it kind of walks you through what being in state government looks like. So kind of walk through what the week looked like.
We did a lot, so it's kind of hard to do a step-by-step, but they gave you like this big packet and you had to study it before you went, and then we took a bar exam on Monday, so we got there Sunday, and then they just kind of briefed us on like conduct and all the boring stuff. And then Monday we took our bar exam at 9 a.m. bright and early, and then if you didn't pass it, then you couldn't run for anything that would require like a law degree. And so I needed to be a Supreme Court justice, so I was really worried about that. But you have to like get your license, and then you have to kind of go through the motions of actually running for an office. So if you wanted to run for governor, you had to start in your party, and then you had to move. So it was kind of like you start in your party, and then you pick what you're running for, and then you campaign. And so people had all sorts of campaign slogans. Like mine was "Go for summer swims and vote for Erin Tims." So that was my campaign slogan, and it was like you just run for an office at some level, so they're local, state, and county. And so you just run for that, and then throughout the week we worked on like our campaigning, and then I think it was Thursday we went to the state capitol, and so we got to meet kind of the real life counterparts of what we were. So the Supreme Court justices got to go to the Supreme Court building, and we talked to the Chief Justice, and that was pretty neat. And so it was just kind of actually seeing what went on.
Interesting. A catchy campaign slogan that probably got you elected.
It did.
And so obviously from county commissioners all the way up through state government. So obviously there's senators, probably representatives, governor, lieutenant governor, and all those things to kind of give you guys a real life experience of what the system looks like.
Yeah.
So obviously that was step one of being part of girls state that took place and looked at state government. And like I stated before, you had the opportunity to participate in Girls Nation, which is more at the looking at federal government level. So how do you think the Girls State experience prepared you for the Girls Nation experience that took you to the larger level, which is similar to a lot of government? Most of our state elected officials that represent Kansas at the national level in DC, most of them started at the state level, so it's very similar, probably.
Yeah, it was. There were a lot of similarities, but there are a lot of differences. So I'd almost say it's more cutthroat at the federal level a little bit. But I mean, I wasn't a senator at the Kansas level, so I didn't really have a direct comparison, but on the federal level, I was a senator, so I got to actually be in the Senate. And so that was one of the major differences, was actually acting as a United States senator. So we actually got to override a presidential veto and pass bills and all the legislation. So actually being familiar with at least the general outlay of how government works at the state level helped me actually pass a bill in the Senate.
Last week I had the opportunity to be, I was at a conference and we had an aide that was he was an aide to a senator that was the chair of a Senate committee. So that was a level of aide that's pretty high. That is extremely influential. It was interesting to hear the behind scenes navigation of how the system works. A lot of times we see stuff on C-SPAN and stuff like that, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes. So, attending Girls Nation at the nation's capital obviously was exciting. I've had the opportunity to be in DC and stuff. So what were some of the highlights of being in Washington, DC?
Oh man, we did a lot. It was Girls State on steroids. So it was Saturday to Saturday. We were there for a whole week. And on Monday, we actually got to go to the White House. So we got to go through the White House, and then we went on the South Lawn. So we got to actually hear Vice President Harris give an address to the NCAA champions. So all those teams were there, and we got to hear her speak on the South Lawn. That was pretty neat. DC's very humid. You've been there. It's pretty rough, but it was fun. And then we got to go to the monuments on Tuesday. So the Lincoln Memorial, the Korean War Memorial, and I think we went to the World War II Memorial too. And then we got to go to Capitol Hill. So that was the fun day. That was Thursday. So we got to meet with Jerry Moran. I shook his hand in the middle of the hallway, and we got to talk to him and ask some questions. And then we actually had the chance to go into the Senate gallery, so where they actually debate and where they present bills. And I got to see a few very notable senators when I was there. So, and then we went to Arlington on Friday, and that was
as you were in the senator or the representative's office complex. Did you go in between offices? Did you go to the basement and do? I mean, because there's walking tunnel. The whole. I mean, it's for block. If nobody's ever been to DC and Washington DC and ever been to any of our senator and representatives' offices, they might be in completely different office buildings and blocks apart from each other, but there's walking tunnels underneath the street everywhere. So you're all over the place. Yep.
So we got to meet with Jerry Moran and Roger Marshall's staff, but I think they were scheduled at 11 and 11:45. So we showed up 30 minutes early to Jerry Moran's office, and then we talked to his staff because he was in the middle of an appropriations committee meeting. And so we were talking with them until 11:50 because no one watched the clock. So we were 5 minutes late to our meeting with Marshall. And so they're like, oh, don't worry, we'll email his staff, you'll be fine. And so they're like, we'll walk you over. So we go down an elevator, through a tunnel, around a corner, up another elevator, and then we're in another building that's a block away. And so we made it, and we didn't get to talk to him, but we made it in 5 minutes. So
we're gonna right now, like we did last year, it's time for kind of a USD 495 quick fact. So as we're talking about governance, we talked about state government, we talked about national government. I think it's important to look at USD 495 and how we're governed, which is by 7 elected school board members, which a lot of people probably know. They serve 4-year terms, and their role within the structure of a school district is to set policy, create vision, evaluate the superintendent, and ensure the budget aligns with goals. And then it's also important, in addition to our local school board, in Kansas, there's actually a Kansas State Board of Education that has 10 individuals that serve there. We're actually in District 7 as a school district, so our member, and they serve 4-year terms also, and our representative that we're extremely fortunate to have on site this week in the district, as he came with the Commissioner of Education, Dr. Randy Watson, was our state board member, Dennis Hirschberger. So gives you a little oversight of governance when it comes to, we're talking about state and federal government, but that's something that really oversees school operations and stuff like that. And back, Erin, you talked about, and you were there in the summer, and you're not lying when you say it. In Washington, D.C. in the summer is extremely humid, extremely hot. When I was there 2 summers ago, as an advocate for the state of Kansas as one of the superintendents, and I mean, full suit and tie, walking around outside, and it was boiling outside walking around that day, and pretty much, I mean, that is the typical dress of everybody that's walking, all the aides and everybody. So that is interesting. So you had that opportunity to go to Girls State and to Girls Nation. What were some of maybe influential leaders that you had the opportunity to meet, or mentors that you met throughout those 2 different opportunities that inspired you at that time and might inspire you in the future?
Honestly, it kind of seems insignificant, but the other girls who were there with me, they were probably the ones who had the biggest impact on my character and how I behaved and what I learned, because here in Larned, we don't, governance isn't really a big thing that students can do. We have our student council, but other than that, it's not very competitive. Yeah. And going up there and seeing, the types of girls that were there with me and how they lead their lives and how they act and their aspirations and their dreams, it inspired me to, be just as competitive and just as hopeful. And moving forward, they taught me to really go for it. Always believe in yourself and always, be willing to do it. So.
And you mentioned that you had the opportunity to tour the mall. I mean, and it's not a shopping mall. I mean, it's Monument Mall, and which is, I mean, if nobody's ever done it, it is, absolutely inspiring to walk around it. Yeah. So other than that, you mentioned that, what were some other memorable, moments of being in DC and participating in the Girls Nation experience?
There are 3 that come to mind. So my grandpa actually served in the Korean War, and actually both my grandpas served in times of war, but he served in the Korean War, and we actually laid a wreath at the Korean War Memorial. And to me, he's just my grandpa. He's not a veteran. He's just my grandpa. But going to that memorial and actually seeing the faces of those soldiers and the statues, they're haunting. And it kind of put into perspective that he did something that not many people can say they did, and that's a sacrifice that not many people understand, and I didn't until I was there and I was face to face. And so the whole program is put on by the American Legion Auxiliary, and so it's a veteran support. It supports the American Legion, and it just put into perspective what our veterans have done for us. And so that was one of the noteworthy moments. But another one was when we went to Arlington National Cemetery, and we got to see the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. And we laid another wreath there. We got to see the changing of the guard and that wreath laying ceremony, and they played taps, and it almost made me cry. It was haunting. You don't get it until you see it, And then the third one is probably, it's more of a subtle moment, but there was a girl who I talked to in my community, because we were divided into communities, and we're of very different political views. And she said that she wanted different opinions, and we had a very civil discussion on our differences of political opinions, and it made me realize that it's possible to actually have a conversation with someone despite differences in views. So
that ability to to cooperate, and I think that's sometimes when we talk about government and accomplishing things, sometimes we don't listen to everybody's viewpoints to come to maybe a common ground, that there's a lot of times a lot more similarities than being on polar opposites.
Yeah.
So when I toured the mall, I thought, was Lincoln's Memorial completely done? The last time I was there, it was under some renovations on some of the stairs. Was it completely open?
No, they still had the scaffolding. All that's still there.
So it's, and that one, it just sits there. It just sits right up there. That was unbelievable. So some of the skills that you learn through either Girls Nation, how do you plan on utilizing some of those leadership skills now and into the future?
I learned that being a leader is a lot harder than it seems, but also a lot easier. I thought going in that you're either born a leader or you're not, but that's not the case. Being a leader takes courage, and I think it's more of a learned thing than a born thing. And I learned that, sometimes being a leader is hard, but that's when things are actually done. And good leaders are authentic. They're themselves. And so I learned that, when leading, not necessarily as an elected official, but just in general, with classmates or with people that I know, leading just means being yourself and doing it with courage. And I just plan to apply that in day-to-day life. So I'm kind of notorious for talking to Scheidemann about how he's wrong at grammar, and it does take courage, believe me. So that's one of the daily things that I try to apply.
Yeah, and I think you stated that perfect. That leadership is a skill. And skills are something that can be improved based off of work and opportunities. The more that you get to use them, the more that they're, like you said, authentic, and to use those opportunities, and no matter what it is, that allows you to build out and try some things. And especially as I'm working on some stuff right now where it's called adaptive to technical type of issues, and those are substantially different in how you go about with your leadership. So I think that's invaluable to learn those types of opportunities. Looking back on it and looking at those leadership things, what are some things you could say, from the people in charge, I guess, at Girls State or Girls Nation? What did you grab anything on specific little things that you'd say, hey, those are traits of leadership that I think are things that I would like to pull away as a huge learning experience?
Oh man, everyone there was very admirable. Everybody had skills of a leader that I would want to emulate from any one of them. But I think they were all tolerant, and they were all just very respectful and kind. And I think that's something that you want from a leader, just tolerant, respectful, and kind. You don't want someone who's not any of those. And so that's probably what I would take away from that. Yeah.
So you said going back to around when you got to go visit Senator Moran and Senator Marshall, and you got to meet with some of their aides and stuff. What was your experience in getting to visit with those aides? What are some things that, coming back from that experience, that you're like, what their roles are and so on?
They didn't really talk about what they do. They asked us more about us. And so I did find out, though, that they do a lot of work that you don't know about. They write pretty much all the bills. Pretty much every bill that's passed is written by an aide, not a senator. And I didn't know that. I thought senators sat down and they're writing out their bills, but it was probably an aide. And so just actually seeing that, they talk to people and they meet people and they write the bills and they do the research, that made me realize that there's a lot going on that senators don't do, and that put a lot into perspective for me.
And if looking back on that experience and thinking of those aides, it is not a generation that are the aides that are very old either. They're probably all in their 20s. Yeah. Almost every aide is pretty much straight out of out of college. So that, I mean, that's kind of interesting twist. A lot of them, I mean, and aides come and go, and different experiences, and most of the aides, I mean, did they tell you where they came from?
One of them was from Kansas, and she was actually a girls' state girl from a few years back. But one of them was from Indiana, I think. And then I don't know where the rest of them were. I think two of the actual staffers were from Kansas. So
Majority, I mean, that was one thing that in visiting with them. Most of our Kansas delegation, no matter if they're a representative or a senator, most of their staff members from aide positions or whatever are from the Kansas position. So as we're moving in, we'd like to shout out some of our dedicated staff members who, consistently go above and beyond, and take that moment to recognize them as we're starting off this school year. We're right at the beginning. So first and foremost, I'd like to send out a huge thank you to Dr. Wassinger for organizing just a week ago the Why Apply Day at Larned High School. We love seeing the pictures of some of our former teachers about what they decided, where they decided to go to college, and so on, sharing their advice to our students. Also, shout out to Bethany Steinlage for everything that we're doing with this week and getting everything ready for the incredible lineup of homecoming activities and working with our student council and our school community. I'd like to also send out a special thanks to Val Marshall, Tina Glado, Alyssa Spain for taking the lead and turning our ideas into action with an impactful parent education night. And then the last one is a huge shout out to Tyler Smith and Scott Tallery. Tyler continues to be a key asset to our district in dealing with electrical work and whatever task we send his way in maintaining our facility. And Scott joined our maintenance team this summer and has done a tremendous job over the last two and a half months in taking care of our school grounds and making sure our landscaping and everything on our facilities were tremendous to start the year. So a couple little few shout outs there. And to close up, Erin, you're in your senior year. So what are your plans for the future?
That's a good question. Right now I'm planning on going into law. I'm not sure where I want to go to school, but I'm thinking Wichita State maybe, and there's a few other schools I'm looking at, but I have no idea what I'm getting my undergrad in, and I embrace the uncertainty. It's okay, but I do want to go into law, so that's the end goal.
So that was so tremendous experience
yes.
at Girls State, being a Supreme Court judge on that. So as we're talking about senior year, and what are some other things that you're extremely excited about? I mean, we kept this conversation very much to Girls State, Girls Nation, and I know you're on the girls golf team to start the year or throughout this year. So what are some other things you're excited about here in your last year as a Larned High School student?
I mean, I definitely am excited about golf. I've been looking forward to this for months. I love our team, and I genuinely think we have a chance to make it to state this year. So, but when it comes to the school, I think it's just making memories. I only have a few months left, and so I'm just trying to enjoy every second of it. So senior paint tonight is definitely
that'll be a good time. Yeah, you get to stall painted first, and then have the paint war after. You guys still walk into Sonic when that's done. That's the plan.
Yep.
So golf season, blue hat still.
Yep.
Rocking it the whole time. So if you could end this with a piece of advice for underclassmen and so younger students that might want to pursue an opportunity like Girls State or anything else that's maybe a little bit outside the box and stuff, and some other leadership programs, what would you tell them?
So there's a quote I actually picked up at Girls Nation. It's by Eleanor Roosevelt, and she says, "You must do the thing you think you cannot do." And I've kind of made it my mantra. And so basically the way I try to adopt that is there are a lot of things in life that you're uncertain about, that, you might sell yourself short and think, I can't do it, so I'm not going to try. But you don't know that you can't do it until you do it and you end up not doing it. But you'll never know if you never gave it that shot. And so try, go for it. And it is scary and it is difficult, but when you actually go past that fear and when you actually conquer it and just give it your genuine best try, that's when good things happen. I didn't think I'd make it a Girls Nation, but I went for it and I did. So
it's been my honor to have you here today. And having you as our first guest for the 24-25 round of podcasts and stuff. And it was mainly, I think it is a tremendous honor, number one, to be a participant at Girls State. But then there's few that probably, we didn't get into how many were chosen from Kansas, but in visiting with you earlier, it's an extreme small number that go on to the Girls Nation. So it's a tremendous opportunity for yourself and an opportunity to represent Larned High School and the great things that we have going on at USD 495. So thank you very much for joining me this afternoon in our first episode this year of the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We're always eager to get some different suggestions for the future guests, so please send those our way. But till next time, and as we get really rolling and we have our list of future guests, we will end episodes kind of giving you a precursor of maybe what the next episode's going to be to so you can be eager for in a couple weeks to listen to the next guest that will be coming up. So excited for that. Again, until next time, continue to show your Larned Pride and go Indians.